Hello, everyone. Old School from whatthebuck.net. Had a really neat conversation on Twitter just now. And actually, let me get the gentleman's handle. I should have had that handy beforehand. I apologize, guys. That's some hack work right there. We'll get up there. At any rate, John Hinkle, D's Bucks, published an article today. It's more of his sort of behind the scenes, pull out stats. So-and-so as good or as bad as we may think he is. And I think it's a good series, which I've enjoyed for sure. But number one Bucks fan, at BWallStreet1335, big shout out to you for engaging in the article. And that's really what these articles are supposed to do. They're supposed to get engaging conversation. Now, John goes after the article with some stats. Now, Raheem Morris certainly said stats are for losers, and lots of people hate stats. Some people love them. People tend to like stats when they support their claim and hate them when they don't. Now, B Wall Street came back with PFF stats, which I've used for ages. And I think there's a validity to some of the things PFF does. And apparently John had some attitude in his article about haters, and that's John's style, and everyone's got different style. I certainly think that my opinion on this, at any rate, is that Chris Conte gets a disproportionate amount of hate given the amount of talent that he has. I think that Chris Conte, even back to Chicago, has had some injury issues, and if you listen to the coaches who he's played for, and you listen to the players he's played with, quite often he's covering up for other folks who haven't made their assignment. Now, that's not always going to be the case, and that's one of the problems with PFF stats and with any stats is you don't know what the play call was. So you can infer it, and when I do film review during the year, and you guys who followed me for a while know that, I go and watch Game Pass, and I watch the All-22 for sure. And you try and infer what the coverage is based on the alignments and the movement off of the snap, et cetera, and then based on what you infer, you draw your own conclusions. Now, those conclusions are only as good as those assumptions are, so you do the best you can. What I can say about Chris Conte is, when he has been healthy, he has been a serviceable safety, for sure. He's had a very good camp as well, which is good. And I think, Shrepnuts in the chat here says it well. He's been moments of brilliance and moments of despair. Now, listening to Coach Cutter the other day at training camp, made a comment that Conte may be the most athletic player on the team, which I did not expect. I heard he was a good athlete, but the way Cutter talks about it, this guy is a freak. Now, none of that matters if he doesn't get the job done. And so they did go out there. They did bring in some other safeties. There will be competition at safety. But right now, Conte and Tandy are the guys. Now, the proof will be in the pudding. With a year, with this experience under the belt for the defense, with the cornerbacks advancing and maturing, with the increased pass pressure, hopefully, from the front seven, what will these safeties do? Because they did come up big last year, both Conte and Tandy at times, in really critical games. But that does not absolve them of the plays where they screwed up and let someone run down the field wide open and get a touchdown, right? So that's, to B Wall Street's point, that's a very good point. You can't dick up 10 times and make an interception, all of a sudden all is well and good. But I do think that Conte gets a disproportionate amount of the hate. And I think safeties in general get that because they're the last line of defense. So irrespective of whether it's their dick up or not, they're going to get the blame because they're the last line of defense. They're supposed to stop it from happening. So we'll dive into this a little bit more on the podcast Thursday, guys. If you want to tune in to whatthebuck.net, listen live. We'll be live at 9 o'clock. I'm not sure who I'm going to have on this week. I'll see if we can get a guest lined up. But we're going to talk about training camp because we had my first sessions of training camp. I'll be at camp again tomorrow for the rest of the sessions, actually, at training camp. So we'll talk about training camp. We'll talk about safety position. We'll talk about the running back position because that's, of course, got a lot of juice because there's a lot of, sort of side-by-side. And the hater thing, whatever. It seems to be a very emotive topic for people, who's good and who's not. And the reality is all these guys are pretty damn good. The question becomes, can we get better with the guys who are behind them? And that remains to be seen. And playing time is where it's going to come out. So at any rate, I really did this video simply to talk about this topic because I really enjoyed the conversation. I enjoyed the interaction. We've got a number of good authors at whatthebuck.net. I'm working to get their Twitter handle put into the byline so that you know who it is, because it's not all coming from me, guys. I don't write that much. I write from time to time, but I usually do videos or audio. But we've got some great guys, JC Delatorre and Hinkle and Evan, and these guys are putting out some really great content. I don't mean to ignore anyone, but those are the guys that are top of mind. But getting involved with them in the Twitter conversation, I think, is great. And so have those conversations, have the discussions, and if you're going to argue stats, then argue stats back. And that's what B Wall Street did. He went after PFF and came back with those stats because you certainly can't cherry pick, right? There's liars, damn liars, and statisticians, as the old adage says. Typically, when I do an eval, I watch the game real time. I go back and watch the game on normal camera angle. Then I go back and I watch the game in all 22, and I take my notes. If I see something I want to dive into, then I'll dive into it more deeply than that. And my read on Conte last year was he was nowhere near as bad as people seem to think. And I think that proved itself out towards the end of the year. But your mileage may vary. B. Wall Street thinks he's the worst player on the team, it would appear, if I'm not oversimplifying contention. Comments he gets beat one-on-one, which a lot of safeties will, because if they were really that good at one-on-one coverage, they would be cornerbacks. And that's just the way that goes. So at any rate, thanks for listening. Thanks for paying attention. Love to hear your opinions about that, the article that's out there, and the other articles that are coming out. And we'll see you Thursday night, 9 o'clock Eastern time on whatthebuck.net. Listen live. I see right now on Twitter, Jonathan just chimed in. So that'll be good. And I'm sure Hinkle will chime in with his normal emotion. So I am like the Spock guy here. I'm emotional at game time. You guys know that. You've heard me get fired up and pissed off and excited and all sorts of things. But when it comes to eval, I never get emotional about eval because it doesn't matter. The emotion is immaterial. It's what they can do on the field. And the reality is I don't really give a shit who plays. I want the best guy to play. So if we go out there and watch through training camp, through preseason, and we see J.J. Wilcox outplay him, then J.J. Wilcox plays, or whoever. I don't give a shit. Random guy from another team, right? You want the best 11 on the field at the time. But right now, Conte is one of the best 11, irrespective of people's opinions. And the coaching staff is consistent about that. Now, you can disagree with the coaching staff. Certainly I have at times. But that's where we're at. So at any rate, exciting times. Training camp tomorrow morning. I'll be doing a video tomorrow after training camp. And then we'll be back on with the podcast on Thursday. But we got training camp Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, I think Saturday, and just not off Sunday. So if you're coming out to training camp, let me know. Maybe grab a beer, and I'll talk to you soon. Go Bucks.